Let's talk about men's hair. Usually shorter hair is a little more challenging to draw just because it's hard to make it look like it's laying the way we want it to. I mean, not everybody has giant monsters in their hair like Giorgio does. So we're going to focus on a little bit more tame versions of hair. So I have these two faces drawn out here. And I'm going to work on this one from the side, just so we can kind of get an idea of like hairlines and how they work. So usually when I start drawing hair, I'm going to just kind of block out where the hairline is. So it's important to keep in mind, like maybe even seeing it from the side is going to be more helpful. Our hair doesn't start at the top. When you draw the head, it doesn't start up here. It starts a little bit farther down. Obviously, unless you're bald, then it's going to start lower. But it's going to be in front of your ear. And the person I'm drawing's got kind of like a fade going on here on the side, so I'm not really going to do too much with the bottom, other than just kind of let myself know that it's happening, that it's ending around there. So, usually what I do when I start drawing is to focus on just like broad areas and broad shapes. So I'm not thinking about individual hairs, I'm thinking about chunks. So I'm just going to start by thinking about like the direction the hair's moving and break it down. That way it's a lot less overwhelming. You aren't thinking about, oh no, this individual hair is not in the right spot. Once I've blocked in the basic shapes of the hair, then I'm going to start adding in values. And so really what I'm going to do is just focus on blocking in the darker areas and then leaving the highlights open, and eventually I'll start adding in more details as I go along. So you'll see that I'm using the side of my pencil, and doing that kind of helps me focus less on those individual strands of hair and focus more on just creating value. It also makes it a lot easier to blend with a blending stump when I get to it. So we'll get started by just blocking in main areas of value and kind of following the direction of the hair. Alright, I'm going to stop here on this one, just so I can talk a little bit about drawing men's hair from the front, or at least short hair in general. So the same principles apply. Basically, we're just cutting this into chunks instead of individual hairs. You can slowly build up to individual hairs like later, but it's always helpful just to break it down simply. So when we look at this one, really all I want to do is just keep in mind that the hairline comes down, So our eyes are halfway down, right around here, roughly. So our hairline is going to come down, and generally, depending on the thickness of your hair, it's going to come above the head a little bit. Some might be a lot, some might be not much at all, just depending on the type of hair you have. So I'm just going to kind of work on creating the shape of the hair. Remember, your hair, as we see here, comes in front of the ear. So when we look at the ear on the side of the head here, don't bring your line way out here, because then you're going to look like you have the sides of your head shaved, and it's going to look kind of goofy. So I'll just kind of block in some ears here just for reference. So usually those sideburns come in front of the ear, and they kind of help define the jawline a little bit. And that hair sticks out depending on the length of it in front of the ear. Some comes behind the ear depending on the length of the hair. That's really a key thing to making hair look realistic, is getting it around the ear in the correct sort of positioning and giving it some volume above the skull. So now that we have kind of an outline, we'll do pretty much the exact same thing. We're just going to block in areas of light and dark, or values. And before I get too far, I want to talk a little bit about a tip that you can do. It sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't, but I find that when I want individual highlighted hairs to show up, I can take a mechanical pencil and push the lead down, so it's just the tip of it. I mean, you could use any sort of blunt, small point to do this, but what you can do then is kind of indent the paper with your pencil. So I'll just kind of draw in a few of these lines here where I see areas that are going to be white. So once I've done that, then when I'm shading with my other pencil, you're going to see kind of the indents left over hanging out there on the paper. So that's kind of a interesting trick that sometimes works, sometimes it's not going to give you the depth and detail that you want. You might want to work on using like a white charcoal pencil or erasing out highlights to get the things that you want as well. But always play with things. Maybe you might invent a technique that works really well for you. I mean, I know I did this on accident because I just ran out of lead and didn't realize it. So you can kind of see some of those leftover indented lines that don't get covered up by the shading. Maybe I'll add some more of these up in the front. The key to getting men's hair to look natural is really to get the direction that the hair is going. So pretty much the hair is never going to be going straight up and down, unless if you've spiked it straight up and down. But even then, it's usually going to be going in some sort of direction. So usually if hair is kind of coming towards you, it's still got kind of a slant to it. This hair that I'm working on is kind of tousled off to the side a little bit, so it's kind of coming down and over as we're working on it. Alright, I'm going to leave it at that, but one last tip before I go. If you're anything like me and you smudge everything you touch, a good tip for you would be to take a piece of scrap paper and set it underneath your hand while you're drawing so that you're not rubbing against any other parts of your drawing. That'll help keep your paper cleaner and keep your hands cleaner. So with that, that would be a couple examples of drawing short hair or men's hair.